I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Donald Trump is attacking Special Counsel Jack Smith again, this time after there has been news that Special Counsel Jack Smith is laser focused on potential new information that Donald Trump was showing classified maps that contained highly sensitive national security information to donors, to aides, and to numerous individuals who were not supposed to come into contact with these maps. This comes from a bombshell New York Times report called "Witnesses Asked About Trump's Handling of Map with Classified Information." And it goes on to say, the map is just one element of the Justice Department's inquiry into former President Donald Trump's possession of sensitive documents and whether he obstructed justice in seeking to hold on to them. The article explains how Jack Smith's federal investigators are now asking witnesses whether former President Donald Trump showed off to aides and visitors a map he took with him when he left office that contains sensitive intelligence information. And there were 4 people cited on background in this New York Times report. And one of the things these people were telling New York Times is that the map might also have been shown to various journalists who were potentially writing books. One of the other topics that investigators have been asking witnesses, and that witnesses have been asked when they've gone before the grand jury, are questions about General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Donald Trump, in his hatred of our military and his hatred of the United States, consistently attacks Mark Milley. He went on Tucker Carlson the other night and called General Milley an idiot, and the MAGA Republicans, they called General Mark Milley woke, and they say our military is too woke, which they're just pushing Russian propaganda points. But the topic of Donald Trump showing people these classified maps and then also talking about Mark Milley, General Mark Milley, likely in very negative ways, is a focus of a new focus of what these investigators have been asking witnesses. The New York Times report goes on to say that investigators have compiled extensive witness testimony, texts, and emails from a number of key witnesses. And at this point, they've constructed a timeline of Trump's actions and movements and interviewed dozens of people, including close advisors of Trump, as well as staff members at Mar-a-Lago and former administration officials who had knowledge of how he handled documents in different settings. And they heard from witnesses, according to this New York Times articles, who described Trump being urged repeatedly in 2021 by aides and advisors to return material to the National Archives, and then how he handled the grand jury investigation by the Justice Department that began early last year and resulted in the subpoena and ultimately the search warrant that was executed and on Mar-a-Lago on August 8th. And then one of the kind of key witnesses who investigators have spoken with is Walt Nauta, who's an individual who's believed to have been seen on security surveillance footage moving boxes around Mar-a-Lago at Trump's direction. So with this news breaking, here are the posts that Donald Trump made on his social media platform. Trump writes, "The one who obstructed on documents was Joe Biden, not Donald J. Trump," is what he writes, and he has obstructed in big letters. I mean, Donald Trump, literally textbook definition of obstruction. For over 18 months, he lied to the Department of Justice, and first to the National Archives, then the Department of Justice, that he returned all of the documents. So the Department of Justice was lied to. That's called obstruction. Then the Department of Justice in May of 2022 sent a subpoena to Donald Trump and said, okay, you're going to continue to obstruct. Well, now here's a formal subpoena issued by a grand jury. Turn over all of the the classified information. And what did Donald Trump do? On June 3rd of 2022, he had his lawyers, Christina Bobb and Evan Corcoran, say, okay, we're responding to your subpoena. Here we have this small red weld folder, legal folder filled with about 38 more classified records. Here you go, DOJ. The DOJ goes, all right, well, you need to sign an attestation that this is all of the documents under penalty of perjury, right? Say that Donald Trump has turned over everything. Is that what you're attesting to? Yes, that's what we're being told. So here you go, DOJ. Here's our attestation. Total lie under penalty of perjury in response to a subpoena. That's very simple textbook obstruction, because then we know on August 8th, the Department of Justice, after 18 months and being lied to in a subpoena, finally was like, all right, I guess we're going to have to execute a search warrant. So probable cause was found by Judge Reinhardt, a magistrate judge in the Southern District of Florida. A search warrant was executed at Mar-a-Lago, and they found thousands of documents that Donald Trump stole, including at least 100 or over 100 classified records, which also included top secret and sensitive compartmented information. And there were also numerous other folders with classified and top secret markings, the contents of which were empty. That's textbook obstruction.
And now let's take a quick break to talk about our next partner, Lomi. Now, I've never been able to compost before. It was always too complicated, too much work, and frankly, I don't think I even knew exactly if I was doing it right. Then I got a Lomi. Lomi allows me to turn my food scraps into dirt with just the push of a button. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns scraps to dirt in under 4 hours. There's no smell when it runs, and it's really quiet. Thanks to Lomi, I have way less garbage each week. My family, we're down from 3 bags per week to just 1. And here's something pretty cool. My wife, she recently started gardening, and we've been able to use the dirt that Lomi produces to help fill the garden. And since I got my Lomi, I throw out way less garbage. That means it's not going to landfills and producing methane. Instead, I turn my waste into nutrient-rich dirt that I can feed to my plants. I feel so great knowing that I'm composting and creating soil instead of waste. And I have basically a limitless supply of dirt for my garden. The other week I had my in-laws over for dinner, and the food cleanup process was such a breeze. Plus, they all think I'm super eco-conscious now. If you want to start making a positive environmental impact or just make cleanup after dinner that much easier, Lomi is perfect for you. Head to lomi.com/Meidas and use the promo code Meidas to get $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/Meidas and use promo code Meidas at checkout. Food waste is gross. Let Lomi save you a cold trip out to the garbage can. And now, back to the video.
Donald Trump then writes on his social media platform, he goes, Joe Biden and the Biden White House knew everything about the unconstitutional raid by the FBI and DOJ on Mar-a-Lago, despite their unequivocal denial. They lied. How horrible and sick. This is all about election interference. Stop the radical left or our country is dead. With Donald Trump, everything is projection. Donald Trump would be the biggest factor that would kill our country, as he tried to do when he was in office. But Donald Trump is saying this based on, you may have seen a previous report we did here on the MeidasTouch Network where we talked about the anatomy of a right-wing conspiracy. And so it started with this group called America First Legal, which was Stephen Miller's group. Miller's not a lawyer. Mark Meadows sits on the board. Mark Meadows isn't a lawyer. I think Mark Meadows also lied about having a bachelor's degree, which I don't think he had. And so non-lawyers make this organization called America First Legal. They say they're doing an investigation, which basically means they're just making a public records request. They get information in their public records request from the National Archives, which says that after a certain point, the Department of Justice was the entity that was handling the investigation. And then one legal said, you see, Biden DOJ, they knew about everything. And as I said in the report that I did, the Department of Justice is part of the executive branch. So yes, is it the Biden DOJ? Yes. However, there is prosecutorial independence, which is supposed to take place and does take place with Merrick Garland. In fact, I think lots of people who probably identify as liberal or progressive may get frustrated that Biden defers to Garland, and Biden isn't involved the way that Donald Trump would tell Bill Barr, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that. So in the Trump DOJ, remember, all of this stuff that Donald Trump says is a confession. Under the Trump DOJ, Donald Trump truly controlled the DOJ and used Bill Barr like his personal attorney. That's not the way it works in the Biden administration. However, the Department of Justice is still, their key officials, their top officials, still are required to be appointed by the president. So they, to some extent, are linked to Biden. And so based on that, you had this group, they did a press release, this first, America First Legal, and saying, the Biden DOJ is involved, you see? And then the the MAGA Republicans on the House Judiciary, they then do like emojis and tweet it out and go, wow, this is wild. And then all the right-wing influencers start posting it, and then Fox posts it, and then New York Post posts it, and all of Murdoch's things post it. And that's the anatomy of a conspiracy, how they just push it. And then Donald Trump goes, you see what everyone's reported. And it was his buddy and fellow fascist, Stephen Miller, who was the one who actually published that report. Here's Donald Trump's next post. He goes, special quote, prosecutor Jack Smith is illegally leaking massive amounts of confidential information to the fake news media. He and his entire family are known Trump haters. He should be removed by the corrupt DOJ at once. There's so much to unpack in this short statement. So Donald Trump is denying that he engaged in misconduct, but now he is accusing Jack Smith of leaking information, confidential information about what? About the crimes that you committed? I don't think Jack Smith is leaking them, but it sounds like this is a confession that the media is accurately reporting, not on confidential information, because your crimes are not confidential. I know you think that you are above the law, but in a country of law and order, you don't get to sign NDAs and, mask and executive privilege your crimes. That's why you're losing executive privilege arguments in front of the court. That's why you're losing all your other confidentiality arguments, because you can't conceal crimes. By the way, that's why your lawyer, Evan Corcoran, in an 83-page or 86-page ruling by the former presiding judge in the D.C. federal court, Judge Beryl Howell, she ruled the crime fraud exception applied in connection with the obstruction of justice of you concealing these records, that you used Evan Corcoran, either knowingly to Corcoran or unknowingly to Corcoran, but regardless, you were using him to commit the crime of obstruction of justice. A federal judge made that finding such that the attorney-client confidentiality didn't apply because you were committing crimes. The next post by Donald Trump is just all in caps, election interference. And then he goes, the next post, the Biden Department of Injustice, together with all of the corrupt Trump-hating puppeteers that surround Joe Biden, are destroying our country, are going all out with election interference through the use of fake partisan and corrupt prosecutors. The people of the United States will not stand for this perversion of our elections and Constitution itself. At some point, they will say, as our country is going to hell, we're not going to take it anymore. Make America great again. And so what Donald Trump's trying to do there is he's trying to incite another insurrection by basically lying about Biden, trying to treat anybody who's not a MAGA cult member as a cockroach, as the other, and then basically do this, I wouldn't even call it a dog whistle, right? It is a loud, freaking, glaring fascist horn to his cult members, basically saying they're not going to take it anymore, go and do something about it. It is a violent call to arms, and that is how Donald Trump communicates with his cult. One other thing to mention, in addition to those posts, which isn't getting a lot of attention, but it is in this New York Times article. It did mention that this week the top congressional leaders by the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate and the House of Representatives actually gained some access to review some of the classified documents that were recovered from Donald Trump's, from Mar-a-Lago. And so notice that you haven't really heard much about that, have you? And I bet you if it was going to vindicate Donald Trump, you would have heard a lot of Republicans saying that. But the fact that you really don't hear much about the fact that group of Republicans have now seen those classified records and they've said nothing about it. I don't know. Tells me a lot. What about you? What about you? Well, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Thank you for watching or listening to this update. Hit subscribe. We're on our way to 1.5 million subscribers. Thanks to your support. Let's get there by this summer. Also, please, if you can, wherever you get your audio podcast, just search MeidasTouch Podcast and subscribe to the MeidasTouch Podcast there. And also, if you want to help fund this network, no pressure either way, go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch, and you can help fund the network there. Well, until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas. Thank you so much for watching. Hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. Have a great day.
Lock him up! Indictment season is upon us. Celebrate with the new Indictment Season t-shirt and v-neck exclusively at store.MeidasTouch.com.